My mom yelled at me, "You have to give us your salary." When I said no to giving my brother my money, they tried to say I wasn't able to manage my own life. In court, I asked for a DNA test. Their big lie, which was about $300,000, fell apart. The judge said, "You're not even his daughter." I left the court free. Hi Reddit, before I start, thanks so much for helping us reach 5,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it. And there's more to come. Let's keep making this community great. Now, here's my story. I'm a 26-year-old woman working as a software engineer in Boston. I've lived on my own since I was 21, but everything changed 2 months ago when my mom shouted at me, "You owe us your salary." Her voice was so loud on the phone, I had to hold it away from my ear. It wasn't even the worst part. She wasn't talking about bills or some emergency. She wanted me to send my entire monthly salary to my younger brother, Evan, a 24-year-old wannabe entrepreneur who had already burned through 3 startups and 2 trust funds, all while living rent-free at our parents' house and treating everyone like an inconvenience. It started off as a polite request. Evan needed some seed money for his new business idea. I said no, clearly and calmly. I had just finished paying off my student loans and was finally saving to buy my own apartment. But somehow, my refusal turned into a family war. My father didn't call me, but my mom did every day, escalating from guilt trips to full-on threats. "You're selfish. You wouldn't have that job if we hadn't raised you. We made you who you are. We deserve this." Then, one day, I got a letter from a lawyer. My parents had filed a petition to gain financial guardianship over me, on the basis that I was mentally unfit to manage my own finances and needed oversight. Their oversight. I laughed at first. I honestly thought it was some kind of bluff, but when the court date arrived in the mail, the panic set in. They were serious. They wanted to legally take control of my income and transfer it to Evan. The worst part? They brought character witnesses, people from my childhood church, neighbors who hadn't spoken to me in years, even an old teacher, all saying I was unstable, erratic, troubled. It was like being gaslit by my entire past. I hired a lawyer, a good one. When he saw the paperwork and the statements, he told me something didn't add up. There were weird inconsistencies in the documents. Income declarations that didn't match mine. Forged therapist notes claiming I had been hospitalized for mental health issues. I hadn't. Even a psychiatric evaluation with a forged signature. That's when I knew, this wasn't just about Evan, this was about something bigger. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I requested a DNA test. Call it a hunch, but for years, I had felt like an outsider in my own family. My parents were distant with me but overly indulgent with Evan. There was a weird tension between my mom and dad anytime I asked questions about my childhood. And when I was 16, I overheard my father telling someone he'd never forgiven my mom for what she did. At the time, I didn't understand it. Now, I wondered if he was even my father at all. The court date arrived. I walked in prepared, lawyer at my side, evidence in a thick folder, and a copy of the DNA results tucked securely in my bag. The courtroom was small, but the tension was suffocating. My parents sat across from me, smug, confident, backed by their fake documents and lies. Evan was there, too, smirking like he was already counting my money. Their lawyer spoke first, painting me as an ungrateful daughter with unstable tendencies. He said I was hoarding money that should rightfully support the family that raised me. Then my lawyer stood up. He shredded their case, document by document, pointed out inconsistencies, called out the forged signatures, and then, right when the judge was leaning forward, eyebrows raised, he dropped the bomb. "We'd like to submit a paternity test, Your Honor." There was a silence that hung in the air like a dropped hammer. My mother turned pale. My father looked like he'd been struck. Evan, confused, like someone had just told him the script had changed, and no one gave him the rewrite. The judge accepted it into evidence. My lawyer handed over the results. I could see the judge's eyes scanning the document. It only took a moment. "Miss Carter," the judge said, "according to this test, your father is not your biological father, is that correct?" I nodded. "And more importantly," the judge continued, "it appears that both parties, the petitioners, were aware of this fact prior to filing for financial guardianship, which means they deliberately omitted a major legal detail while attempting to assume control over your finances." My mother tried to speak, but the judge held up a hand. "Mrs. Carter, your actions border on fraud. You knowingly submitted false documents and attempted to manipulate this court. And you," he turned to my father, Failed to disclose your lack of legal guardianship status over an adult woman who is not your biological child. Then came the words that shook me to my core, "You're not even his daughter." I stared at my mother. She didn't deny it. She didn't even flinch. My father just sat there, silent, defeated. Evan looked like a puppet with the strings cut. Their case collapsed. The judge dismissed the petition immediately and even suggested I file charges for attempted fraud and emotional abuse. I walked out of that courtroom with my dignity intact, and my freedom. I should have felt victorious, but I felt hollow. I had spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, their love, their acceptance, and now, I found out I was never really one of them. I was a paycheck, a pawn. I got back to my apartment that night and just sat on the floor. No calls, no texts, not even an apology. But that was just the beginning. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. My parents were now demanding reparations for raising me. A handwritten letter from my mother was enclosed, stating that since I was never truly their child, I owed them 26 years of back rent, food, and school expenses. Her words were venomous. "You robbed us of our lives. The least you can do is pay it back." I laughed out loud. Then I cried. Then I packed my bags. There was one more thing I had to do before this could all be over, something I hadn't told anyone, not even my lawyer. Because the DNA test had revealed something else, too, my real father's name. And I had just tracked him down. I stared at the name on the DNA report for the 100th time. Daniel Kiading. It meant nothing at first, just a name, but a bit of online digging led me to an address in Vermont, just 2 hours from me. A retired college professor, no spouse listed, no other children. And one grainy photo that made my stomach twist. He had my eyes. I didn't know what I wanted from him, closure, maybe, or just someone to confirm that this wasn't all a mistake, that my life hadn't been a 26-year-long lie. So, I drove up there one Sunday morning, hands shaking, gripping the steering wheel, half hoping he wouldn't be home. But he was. Daniel Kiading opened the door, blinked at me in confusion, and asked if I needed directions. I don't remember what I said exactly, just that it all came tumbling out. My mother, the guardianship case, the DNA test, him. For a long time, he didn't say anything, then he invited me inside. The house was modest but filled with books. He made tea, and we sat across from each other like two strangers meeting through a shattered mirror. He confirmed it. He'd had a brief affair with my mother. They were both in their early 30s, both married at the time. He never knew she had gotten pregnant. She never told him. He was stunned. I could see it in his face. But then something shifted. His voice got quieter, calmer, sadder. "She must have been scared. Your father, the one who raised you, he was a very angry man back then, controlling." I nodded. That part checked out. Daniel didn't ask for a relationship. He didn't jump to play dad, but he didn't push me away either. He gave me a warm smile and said, "If you ever want to talk again, you know where to find me." And that was enough, for now. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I'd drive home and slowly rebuild my life, knowing who I was and where I came from. But my old family, they weren't done with me yet. A week later, I received notice that my parents had taken out a loan in my name, $25,000. I don't even know how they did it, probably using the information they still had from when I lived under their roof, but the debt was now mine. When I called the bank, they said the signatures matched and the address was listed under my old mailing address, the one I had stupidly forgotten to update on a few documents. I was furious. No, I was beyond furious. This wasn't just manipulation anymore, this was identity theft, fraud, malicious theft. So, I fought back, legally. I hired a private investigator to dig deeper. I gave him full permission to pull any relevant records, even go back years if needed. What he found shocked even my lawyer. My parents had opened 3 credit cards in my name when I was 18, quietly, carefully, each time, maxing out the card and letting it go to collections before settling it under aliases. It had tanked my credit score without me even realizing it back in college. I had thought it was just the student loan debt making things hard. No, it was them. And guess who was listed as a co-signer on one of the cards? Evan. That was the final straw. We filed criminal charges, identity theft, fraud, forgery. It was a long process, but the paper trail was undeniable. I testified in court, this time not as the accused, but as the victim. I'll never forget the look on my mother's face when the verdict was read. For the first time, she looked small, powerless. My father stared at the ground. Evan wasn't even there. He had fled the state before the trial even started, likely hoping to avoid being dragged into it. The judge sentenced both of them to probation and mandatory restitution payments. They avoided jail time, by some miracle, or maybe just expensive lawyers, but their reputations were in tatters. Their social circle collapsed. The church they prided themselves on attending every Sunday asked them not to return. Their bank accounts were frozen until the investigation was complete. Every asset they had was picked apart. And me? I moved forward. I changed my last name, bought a small condo under an LLC, got promoted at work, not because of the drama, but because I earned it. And I stayed in touch with Daniel. Slowly, carefully, we started building something fragile, but real. He came to my birthday dinner. He cried when I called him my biological father without flinching. He told me he'd never replace what I lost, but he'd try to be better than the ones who had taken so much. One day, I got a message request on Facebook. It was from Evan. I messed up, Mom and Dad ruined everything, I didn't know they'd go that far, I just wanted a chance, please, can we talk? I blocked him without responding. Because here's the truth no one tells you, some families don't deserve forgiveness. Some stories don't end with reconciliation. Mine ends with survival. With justice. With freedom. They tried to steal my identity, my salary, my life. Now they have nothing. And I finally have everything I was never given. Peace,